Part 2, Chapter 8. Now we're going to look at inventory valuations using the periodic inventory system. So we have a number, but we'll start with specific identification method. And in this case, we refer to matching each unit sold during the period on each unit on hand at the end of the period with its actual costs. Used by companies selling unique, expensive products with low sales volume. This makes it relatively easy and economically feasible to associate each item with its actual cost. An example might be somebody that sells boats, high-end boats, or high-end jewelry. All right, here's an example. We have beginning inventory of 1,000 units at 12. We bought 2,000 at 18, and then we sold 2,500 at 30. We bought another 3,000 at 23, and we sold another 2,200 at 33. Now, the way these solds went, and this is specific identification, on February 4th, you sold 700 of the $12 units and 1,800 of the $18 units. On February 26th, you sold 100 of the $12 units and 100 of the $18 units and 2,000 of the $23 units. What's the cost of goods sold? First of all, what you want to do is figure out total cost of goods available for sale. And that's 117,000, and you had 6,000 units available. Next, you want to figure out your total sales price, which is 4,700 times 147,600. Now, the next thing you want to know is total units available for sale, units sold, to get the ending inventory, because what you're really trying to do is allocate the 117,000 against the units sold and the units in ending inventory. And it doesn't matter what method you use, whatever amount you allocate to cost of goods sold and ending inventory must total the total cost of goods available for sale, and that should be your check figure. So now let's go back to our problem. Okay, we sold these units at different times, so now we know that on February 4th we sold 700 of the $12 units, which left us with 300, and we sold 1,800 of the $18 units, which left us with 200. Then we sold, on February 26th, 100 of the $12 units and 100 of the $18 units, leaving 200 of the 12, 100 of the 18, and then we sold 2,000 of the $23 units. So now we can do our cost of goods sold. We had 700 plus 100, or 800 of the $12 units. We had 1,900 of the $18 units and 2,000 of the $23 units. Now if you notice, I add up all the units, I get 4,700, which is how many I said had been sold. And now we have our cost of goods sold. We subtract that from our ending inventory and we get 27.2. Now another way to check that is to take the ending units times the price. So if we take 200 times 12, 100 times 18, and 1,000 times 23 and add them up, as you can see, we get the same total for our ending inventory. That's a good way to always check your work. So in this case, our cost of goods, our gross profit is 57,700. We take our sales minus our cost of goods sold, and that's how you get your gross profit. Now let's look at some cost flow assumptions. These are assuming that all the units are the same, but what we're going to do is focus on the cost. So the first one we have is called FIFO, first in is the first out, and it assumes the units first acquired are sold, which means the costs associated with the first units are the first units that are transferred out, and ending inventory consists of the most recently acquired units. LIFO assumes units. LIFO, which is last in is the first out, assumes the opposite. Assumes units last acquired are sold first. Ending inventory consists of first acquired units. Now I want you to know, under the international standard, LIFO is not acceptable. So remember that, because you could have a question like that on a quiz or a test. So remember, under the international standard, LIFO is not acceptable. It's only acceptable in the United States. Now, average cost assumes inventory cost is a mix of goods available for sale, and the average is weighted by the number of units. Now, first we're going to look at periodic. Cost of goods sold is determined at the end of the period, so it is irrelevant when items were bought or sold during the month for FIFO, LIFO, or average cost. So let's determine our ending inventory. Now, I'd like you to know, in this case, we're doing our first, what you always want to do is determine your total cost of goods available for sale and units. Always do this first. Second, what we want to do is figure out sales if they want us to do gross profit. They don't always want that. But this is something you should always do. The units available for sale, subtract the units sold, and that gives you your ending inventory. Make sure that when you add your units together, you get units available for sale. And when you allocate the cost, make sure that they equal the total cost of goods available for sale. So now we're going to look at FIFO. Now I want you to know whether you're doing periodic or perpetual. For FIFO, you'll always get the same answer. It doesn't matter, periodic, perpetual, you get the same answer. That is not true if you're doing LIFO or average cost. You get totally different numbers. So here we have it. We sold these. We have none left, because we're getting rid of 4,700 units. That means we got rid of all of those. Now we've taken care of 3,000 of the 4,700 units that were sold. And there's our 1,300, so we have to take 1,700 times 23, and our total cost of goods sold for the 4,700 units using FIFO is 87,100. Units in ending inventory are 1,300 times $23. And if you notice, if you add the two together, you get the 11700. Now, our gross profit in this example is going to be 60,500. Now, this is what this would look like when you do it in your homework. This is the format. So you see your beginning inventory, and if you notice, for ending inventory, all we have left is 1,300 units times 2,300, and cost of goods sold equals the 1,000 units, plus we sold the 2,000 units plus the 1,700. So that's what it looks like when you're doing your homework. Now let's do LIFO. LIFO. Again, the difference here is you start with the most recent unit. So all of those would be gone. And we would have 300 left of those and 1,000 of the $12 units. Now our cost of goods sold is 99,600. Our ending inventory is going to be 17,400, because it's going to be 1,000 times 12 and 300 times 18. And if you add those two together, remember to always do that, you get the 117. And now our gross profit is only going to be 48,000. And that's always true when you have rising prices. When you have rising prices, LIFO is going to give you the lowest gross profit. And that's why people like to use it for tax purposes. This is what it would look like in your homework. So take a look at this. If you notice the columns for ending inventory, they're showing you 1,000 at $12 and 300 at 18. Now we're going to do our last one, which is weighted average. This one is really easy under periodic. What we're going to do is we're going to take our total cost of goods available for sale and divide by total units. However, one thing they might trick you on is make sure that you're only going to do your total cost of goods available for sale based on when your last sale was. But of course, in this case, never mind. All sales are assumed. It doesn't matter when things were sold. So in this case, we're 117 divided by 16,000, which tells us our average cost for the month is $19.50. We're going to, for ending inventory, it's going to be 1,300 times 1950. Cost of goods sold is going to be 4,700 times 1950. You add the two together, you get your 117. And if you notice, now our gross profit equals 55,950. Now when we look at the three, if prices are rising, FIFO is going to give you the best gross profit. LIFO will give you the lowest. That's why people like to use FIFO for book and LIFO for tax. The weighted average is always going to be in the middle. And that ends this presentation on periodic using LIFO, FIFO, and weighted average.